Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sir Han on X on this 29th of October 2025. Coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. Awfully rainy and cooler here in Cincinnati. Temperatures in the mid 40s. Couldn't do anything outside today. Just stayed home and just sneezing up a storm because the cold weather is here. Probably all parts of the country, wherever you're watching or listening to. But it's that time of year finally. Thank goodness. Got enough of the humidity of the summer, which is just absolutely nasty. So here we are. The weather's finally here. Well, leaves are falling. And it's getting about that time for holiday shopping. Of course, this week is Halloween week. You guys are going any kind of trick or treating. Please be safe. That's all I got to say. Hope everyone has themselves a wonderful day today. Get right down to it. Lots of boxing history tonight all over the place. I'll touch on the end of the show. And of course, a historical moment in the World Series for a team that finally got over the hump. I'll touch on that here in a minute. First, we're going to go to the NFL, and it is week 9 of the NFL, which starts tomorrow. I will deliver the picks. And I'll save the Bengals and Bears for the end one because I got a lot to say about that. It is, of course, tomorrow night in Miami between the Ravens and the Dolphins. Lamar Jackson is back, and that's pretty much all you need to know. We know the yippee yippee yay yay that's going on all week, especially with John Harbaugh, who lied worse than Pinocchio ever did throughout the press conference. I expect the NFL to do something about that. You know, the designation of full participant versus limited participants. I don't know how the hell the terminology works, but it doesn't matter. He was a full participant. He's going tomorrow against Miami. Miami's unchecked out. The 5 minutes of fame were over Sunday when they beat Atlanta, and Baltimore's going to go there and handle business. And I expect them to take care of business rather convincingly, and just basically get the W. Don't have to be anything fancy. Just go out and get the W. That's the only thing that matters. Now we go to the early slate games. And we start, of course, in New York with the 49ers and the Giants. Banged up teams both ways all over the place. We talk about Malik Neighbors and Cam Scadaboo for the Giants. Unfortunately, both done for the season. 49ers have injuries all over the place. The key one, of course, is Brock Purdy. Although Mac Jones has done about as well as you possibly could to replace him. But I'm going to give the slip nod of the 49ers because the Giants, I think, after what took place over the weekend with the Philadelphia Eagles and everything there, not having Cam Scadaboo, and you're going to turn Jackson Dart into a one-dimensional player, especially in that offense, plays right into the hands of the 49ers defense. Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, calling up great schemes, especially without their top two guns on the defensive side of the ball, Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. Defense still doing all they can. They go into New York. They handle business. It's going to be a close game because the travel cross country is going to be a different, but still give me San Francisco on the road, albeit not by much. And speaking of cross-country trips, it is the Chargers going to the Titans. Nothing going on with the Titans. Chargers still holding hope to be able to win the AFC West with Kansas City now charging and the Broncos finding themselves. Chargers stay afloat. They win this one. This one won't be close. And as I think you know what as Cam Ward eloquently say, to be real, I think we're just trash. There's another word for trash. I won't use it on my platform. Minnesota and Detroit. Ongoing controversy, of course, in Detroit with a quarterback. Carson Wentz likely done for the season. So they finally going to give the chance once again to J.J. McCarthy. But they're doing it against the Lions defense is going to have Brian Branch back after whatever the frick he did at the end of that game at Kansas City and the bye week. But in the Detroit offense is just rolling right now. Aiden Hutchinson coming off the contract extension he officially signed tonight. And the other edge, he's going to be playing better. Detroit wins this one at home. I think this one's going to be convincing. I mean, Minnesota's defense is stout. I mean, Brian Flores has done the job there. But the Lions offense has so many ways they can beat you with so many weapons. I mean, Jared Goff, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams. The offensive line is solid, of course, with Penei Sewell at the left tackle position. They have so many ways they can beat you on offense, and it's going to take its toll on the Minnesota defense. Do give me Detroit at home. Atlanta at New England. After the Falcons laid against the Miami Dolphins, not expect them to go up to Foxborough to take care of this one. Give me the Patriots at home. They're rolling. Drake May is ascended to a top 10 quarterback in the NFL this season. Got a nice plethora of weapons around him. Of course, the Patriots made the two interesting trades I'll touch on here in a second. But do give me the Patriots at home. They keep the momentum going. Drake May continues his hot streak. He continues to play well. And the big one that's going to take place in Pittsburgh is the Colts and the Steelers. The jury is still out on Indy. I'll give this. You're 7-1. You're playing very, very darn well. I can't say anything bad about you. You're 7-1. You're playing well. You're going into Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's had it just out to them the last 2 weeks by Cincinnati and Green Bay the last 2 weeks, respectively by Noah Fant and Tyler Kraft for those are two respective teams. You're going against the Indianapolis Colts team that has Tyler Warren. And, of course, the premier running back in the NFL right now is Jonathan Taylor, who should be an MVP candidate. Of course, I'll touch on the MVP stuff down the line when we get to it. This game is going to be a lot closer than people think, simply because the Steelers are up against it. I mean, I was calling for, especially the Steelers fan base is calling for a Colts blowout. I don't know why. I mean, I get it. They're 7-1 and they're cooking right now, especially Lou Anarumo with that defense, with the DeForest Buckner clogging up the middle, and you have, of course, Laiu Latu outside on the edge, and Cam Bynum taking care of that secondary. This is a kind of game we're going to find out just how good the Colts are, because they're going to go through a tough stretch here coming up, because they got a couple weeks. They got to go to Kansas City for a big late Sunday afternoon tilt. I'm going to take the Colts, but I'm not going to designate this thing as a blowout like a lot of people are, because I think Pittsburgh's going to come to play. Because we're going to find out how good this Indianapolis team can be. Because we know they play pretty darn well. I'm not going to play the schedule part because I think it's just moronic. But when the games start to get tougher, and the schedule gets tougher, and the season wears on, we're going to find out how good this team can really be. You got to give them their due. They're 7-1, first in the AFC. So you give them their credit. But we're about to find out the next few weeks how good this team is going to be. And going to Pittsburgh, you say a lot of things about Pittsburgh right now, but we'll find out just how good the Colts are going to be. I'm taking the Colts. I think this one's going to be closer than people think. And another good one here, this is in Houston. This is the Broncos and the Texans. I thought the last couple of weeks the Broncos started to find themselves after a bit of a shaky start. And I think the Texans sort of found themselves a little bit against San Francisco because they started to protect C.J. Stroud better. But this Broncos defense is serious business. I said this all along. This defense is as good as anyone in the NFL. Maybe you can probably say the best. We talk about, look at that personnel. Granted, no Pat Surtain for the next month, which is a sort of a blow to the secondary, but that defense will still be fine. And the question again for the Houston, I've said this all season, and especially going back to last season, that playoff loss to Kansas City, can they protect C.J. Stroud? I mean, they managed to uphold themselves well against the 49ers, but now you're going against a defensive front in Denver who leads the league in sacks and is going to go after the quarterback, and that's what I expect here. And on offense, J.K. Dobbins is still continuing his resurrection. Bo Nix, like he found himself a little bit targeting Courtney Sutton and Evan Ingram in that offense. Denver wins this one on the road. I think this one is going to be down to the wire. I went on a coin flip on this one because I thought both teams over the last couple of weeks started to find themselves a little bit. But I just like the Denver's defensive front against the Texans' offensive line, and they're going to disrupt C.J. Stroud the best way possible. Give me the Broncos on the road. And Carolina at Green Bay, forget it. This game's going to be over at halftime. Jordan Love is cooking, and I expect him to continue to cook, and they're going to smash Carolina. That game's going to be over, I think, within the first three quarters. Carolina, try the best they can to hang it around, but no Bryce Young. It's not going to matter. Good luck with this one. Green Bay wins big. Which leads me to what's taking place this Sunday. And it's here in Cincinnati. It's the Bears and the Bengals. A lot of stories both ways on this one. I mean, the biggest one for the Bears is their injury report. I mean, their injury report's so thick, I'm not sure you can fill that injury report in a hospital room. That's how thick that injury report is. Now, of course, we know no Trey Hendrickson or Joe Flacco in practice for Cincinnati. Everyone here is calling for a Bears blowout. I don't know where that's coming from because they looked awful against the Baltimore Ravens this past Sunday, and that was without Lamar Jackson. Now, for the Bengals side, we know they're up against it. I mean, especially after what happened Sunday when they basically laid an egg to the Jets. We know what happened with that one. I mean, a 24-10, 31-17, 38-24 leads. Couldn't put them away. But the Bears, even though they're playing well, it's like something is missing with this team. I don't know what it is. I mean, granted, their secondary is banged up. And do you think it would help Jamar Chase and Noah Fant to put big numbers for fantasy purposes? But we've seen this act from the Bengals before. I mean, of course, the Bengals fans carrying themselves like cowards after the big win over Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago. Still using excuses for losing to the Jets when the fact is it's because the Bengals fans carry themselves like morons. But when we go into this game Sunday, it's not going to. It's a tricky game both ways because key guys might likely be out. The Bengals are badly against it right now. I mean, badly against it. I mean, they're pretty much just selling season tickets. I'll touch on that here in a second. But I'll not act like the Chicago Bears are world beaters either, because they aren't. I mean, the jury is still out on Caleb Williams, but Ben Johnson, I'll give him this, has helped him out somewhat from, remember him, the offensive coordinator with the Lions coming to Chicago. But it's going to come down to simplistics as whether or not the Bengals defense can stop this two-headed monster at running back, Kyle Monagai and DeAndre Swift. And that's a resounding no. That's a difference. This game has shootout written all over it. But in the end, the Bengals are going to do everything they can to compete and keep it competitive. And if Joe Flacco's there, they have a strong chance to win it. But the defense is not going to stop that two-headed monster at running back. Give me the Bears on the road. I think this one's going to come down to a final possession. And the Bears offense is just going to slowly, gradually wear down the Bengals defense. Slowly but surely. Competitive game, shootout. Give me Chicago on the road. So that takes care of the early slate games. Now we're going to touch the 4 o'clock slate games, the so-called big games. Of course, we know the big one in Buffalo. I'll touch on that here in a second. The Saints and the Rams. Rams coming off a bye. Saints, we know they're going for the number 1 overall pick. No brainer. Give me the Rams on that one. Jaguars and Raiders. Neither team really go. Jacksonville, maybe the true colors have come out since they blew their load against Kansas City, but they're going to Las Vegas against the Raiders team that's down against it. Jacksonville probably wins this one on the road. I don't even know who's the Raiders quarterback. I know Trevor Lawrence is just mid at best, but you're going against the Raiders. Jacksonville gets a win on the road, but the Raiders are just taking for a top pick right now. Which leads me to what's going to take place on the big game nationwide across the region, Kansas City at Buffalo. We've seen this story before. It's a regular season game. It's not the playoffs. We're not talking about the playoffs here. It's a regular season game. And we know that all the storylines have gone on over the last 5 years when these two clash, especially the quarterbacks. Big tough loss for the Bills this week. No Ed Oliver, who's had a tricep procedure done. He's going to be out. Kansas City is going to have both their stud wide receivers, Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. And, of course, Travis Kelce is our tight end, Noah Gray. And, of course, Patrick Mahomes is a surgeon right now. Against the Buffalo Bills defense that finds way to gives up big plays some way, somehow, and I don't know why with that personnel. And for the Bills to have a chance to win this, you're going to have to give James Cook the ball 35 to 40 times. That's your only chance of getting to win this game. It's not like in years past where you could be able to find ways to get the win like they did the last couple of years in the regular season again in Buffalo, which is what they did. But this time it's totally different. You better give James Cook the ball 35 to 40 times a game. Subtle move by the Chiefs today, signing Mike Pennell after he wanted out of Cincinnati. I don't blame him for that one. But the Chiefs offense is starting to cook at the right possible time and is slowly peaking at the right possible time. And this year, they're going to break this regular season drought. They're going to go to Buffalo, and they're going to handle business in a shootout. It's going to come down to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. It's still going to be Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to find a way to escape Buffalo with a W. Kansas wins this one on the road. This one's going to be a shootout. It's going to be a classic like all the Bills-Chiefs games have been over the last 5 years. This one won't be any different, except this time, Kansas City is going to get a regular season win in Buffalo on their turf. That's what it's going to come down to. The Bills' secondary is not necessarily all that great. Going against Rashee Rice, who's been cooking since he's come back from suspension. Xavier Worthy as good as anyone. Still have Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton. And as long as you have Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball, and he's just on a tear right now, he might just steal the MVP from everyone. They're going to win it. They're going to win the Buffalo Sunday afternoon. The Sunday night game is Seattle and Washington. Terry McLaurin for Washington. They were just immediately ruled out. Going against the Seattle team traveling cross country. Seattle playing a lot better than I thought. I'll give them their props. But on Art Monk retirement night, give me Washington at home. Jaden Daniels is going to come back and right the ship a little bit. So give me Washington at home. And the Monday night tilt is the Cardinals and the Cowboys. Dallas' offense is just the phenomenal right now. I mean, we know that the defense, the defense can't stop 11 statues to save their lives, but their offense is phenomenal. Going to come down to Dak Prescott or Kyler Murray. Give me Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. They're going to win that one big. Give me Dallas at home on that Monday Night Football game at Big D. So there's the picks for Week 9. Now to what's going on here in Cincinnati again. And the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media continue their cowardice and because they're down bad. I mean, when you lose to a winless team, when you're favored by a touchdown to win, I mean, what more can you expect? Now, all of a sudden, some weird play went viral all over the internet. It involves Myles Murphy. I'm not even going to get into the details of what the video was about or what Myles Murphy is. But it seems like once that video went viral, Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media showed their cowardice once again to stick up for a guy who's basically played the equivalent of 100 snaps in his NFL career since he was drafted 2 years ago. The same guy that the entire fan base calls a bust. Are you that down bad to defend a guy who's basically shouldn't even be on an NFL roster right now? Forget NFL roster. Let me pause for a second. This guy shouldn't even be on a practice squad, let alone an NFL roster. And we have Bengals fans and Cincinnati media that's defending this guy. That should tell you how broke that fan base got when they lost to the New York Jets. I mean, the play, I guess, he got engaged with a tight end, fell on all fours, and missed a tackle. And the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media, being the true, genuine cowards that they are, found the need to defend that. Why are you defending a play that made no sense? Why are you defending a guy who was basically down on all fours and who shouldn't be on an NFL practice squad, let alone an NFL roster? Why are you defending it? Where are you going to get with it? Anywhere? That's why I quit dealing with them guys a long time ago. You're defending a guy who shouldn't have been drafted. Really, he shouldn't have even been drafted. Forget about being drafted in the first round the way they were, because we know how the Bengals scouting team works, if they even have a scouting team. They were defending a guy who shouldn't even be on any practice squad as an undrafted free agent. That should tell you how low and how cowardly the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media have been since listening to the Jets. I mean, I get it. You were broken and shattered in several pieces. I mean, it'll do that to you. Why would you defend a guy like that on a play that was basically irrelevant? I mean, I'm seeing a couple of the guys I follow on the X platform just grill them. And I tell you guys this, just keep grilling them. When you resort to having to defend Myles Murphy, a guy who's not on let me back up. If you're resorting to defending a guy who has no business being on an NFL practice squad roster, let alone an actual NFL roster, speaks to the tune of your cowardice. And I don't know what exactly to tell you at this point. And you're really past it as a fan base. And I mean past it. You're defending Myles Murphy. And you trying to tell me, I mean, first of all, someone tried to tell me the guy is better than Shamar Stewart. First of all, I don't even know if Shamar Stewart actually has played this season, but that's not really saying much. But if you're resorting to defending Myles Murphy, what kind of a cowardly and ignorant fan base are you? You're defending a guy who has no business being on a practice squad, let alone an NFL roster. I thought you guys can't get any more cowardly or any more sad. You find a way to do it. And I know that Just Lost broke you guys in half because I called you out on your cowardice, and you guys decided to come at me. I gave you the warning. I guess you want to try to find ways to make yourselves relevant because the sand is running out in your hourglass during this so-called Super Bowl run you cowards like to call this, which it really isn't. Your 5 minutes of fame are up. Your stocks have crashed worse than Enron, and we know what happened to Enron in the business sector. If you think defending Myles Murphy is going to help you, please shut your mouths. Please get off these apps. Please go to a nearby hospital, and we have a lot of good ones here in Cincinnati, and I mean a lot of them. Go to an emergency room. Please go get checked for CTE, and after that, have the results. You're more welcome to send them to me so I can find out what's wrong with you, and I can tell everybody what's wrong with you guys. Because I don't know why you guys resort to defending Myles Murphy of all things. That's absolutely weird. Just defending a guy who has no business being on a practice squad, let alone an NFL roster, on a play where he found himself down on all fours trying to match up with a tight end. What do you guys gain out of it? I mean, I'm seeing seeing the two guys that I follow on the X platform grill you to the ashes, and I continue to endorse them to go ahead and grill you to the ashes. But some of you guys need to seriously check for CTE at this point, and maybe find one of those low-level shrinks that can break you out of the depression phase because after what happened to you guys Sunday. My goodness. I mean, it's bad enough you guys resort to selling your tickets, and now you guys say you don't want to buy tickets because you guys are just the absolute bunch of cowardly bandwagoners. Now you guys are purchasing billboard signs and posting them all over Cincinnati in another way to embarrass yourselves, to defending Myles Murphy on social media. Just when I think you guys can't get any lower in any walks of life and show yourselves as the biggest bunch of embarrassing cowards, you did it again. Nothing more I'm going to have to say. All because you want to defend Myles Murphy on a play he was on all fours. Something I'll be taking notes on moving forward. End of conversation. Now, this is for actually a few of you guys who I know from the ATL. I know a few of you I've seen a few times around here who loves the ATL. I said I was going to donate this night to you. I'm going to do it. It was 30 years ago at the old Fulton County Stadium in Atlanta. It was the 1995 World Series winners, Atlanta Braves, celebrating the 30-year anniversary this week as they clinched the series against the Cleveland Indians to win that particular World Series in 95. The couple years before, we talk about this team, what they've done up to this point, multiple division championships, multiple Golden Glove winners, Cy Young winners, especially talk about the great Greg Maddux. The only thing that was missing was them getting over the hump. We know what happened in 1991 against Minnesota in that game where Jack Morris just pitched a gem. And, of course, losing the 92 World Series to Toronto. And, of course, not being able to get over the hump in 93 against Philly. And we know about the strike-shortened season in 1994. But before the strike-shortened season in 1994, question across the Major League Baseball panels was, can the Braves finally get over the hump? As they were, at that point, was pegged the team of the decade. Remember, it was at that point. It changed eventually later on. But at that point, they were pegged as a team of the decade. But they never could, get over that hump. They got to the World Series twice in 91 and 92, but never got over the hump. So we go to the 1995 season. This is a strike-shortened season. Remember what happened in 1994 till they played what turned out to be the equivalent of a 144-game season. This is a team that finished 90-54, the best record, the second best record in the National League behind Cincinnati. But they talk about some of the big things they was able to do. Maybe the sneakiest thing they did for that team was acquire Marquise Grissom from the Montreal Expos in exchange for Robert Kelly and Tony Tarasco, because Grissom gave them something in the center field they haven't had, and a guy that could run the bases, because Grissom was that guy during that time, and that was a sneaky good trade for the Braves that helped them moving forward. Of course, eventually they did sign Mike Slayton, but they sent him out the door, and they got a couple of other pieces on top of it. But when you think about this run, and I break down how they were against most of these teams, they basically had a winning record. The only team they didn't have a winning record against was the New York Mets. But other than that, they had a winning record against every other team in Major League Baseball, in the National League. Remember, this is before interleague play started to come around, and they ruled the roost for the National League, despite having the second best record behind Cincinnati. And we talk about what they did in the playoffs. I mean, we have a pitching staff like you had with Tom Glavine, Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, Steve Avery, among others, and a guy like Mark Wohlers coming out of the bullpen. You talk about you always going to have a chance against anyone, and basically, when you talk about getting to that point, they were lights out. Granted, they gave up runs against Colorado Rockies, which we know how Colorado is over there. I mean, you could basically love type of baseball, and the sucker could fly 7,000 feet across the river, like you could probably see an airplane flying over your head. I mean, that's how hitting home runs in Colorado were. But they won that series 3-1. But that pitching staff showed why they might be the greatest starting rotation in baseball history in the 1995 National League Series against the Cincinnati Reds. Basically, a series that was basically pegged as a toss-up because of the lethal lineup of the Reds. But the lineup Braves shut them down. I mean, they locked them up and shut them down, brought the brooms out and swept them, shut them out 6-0 in this clincher Game 4 in Atlanta. Really, clapper was, and the thing that was impressed me about that particular series from the Atlanta perspective, the Reds had guys on base, and when they needed to get a strikeout or key out, the Braves pitching staff did that, and that's why they had to sweep. The Reds tried everything. They just had no answers. And we have two surreally all-time great top-of-the-rotation pitchers like Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine. You better be on your A game because they're going to keep you off balance, and that's what the Atlanta Braves pitching staff did to the Cincinnati Reds in that 4-game sweep. And, of course, it concluded with the 6-game win series over the Cleveland Indians. The capper was, of course, Game 6, where Tom Glavine pitched to Jim and wound up being the 95 World Series MVP. And, of course, that game known for David Justice, the Cincinnati native here, fellow Thomas More alum, I might add. If someone tell David Justice I'm a Thomas More alum like him, David Justice shredding the Braves fans because I guess he felt like he didn't think much of them. And in that particular game, on a 1-1 pitch, he hit the lone home run in that game, the only run of that particular Game 6 clincher. He went from villain to hero with just one swing of the bat, because that swing of the bat won Cleveland the 1995 World Series at Fulton County Stadium 30 years ago this week. When we talk about the top two guys in the pitching rotation for Atlanta, we talk about Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine. There aren't just one or two pitch guys. They had a complete arsenal, and they kept batters off balance all the time. We talk about the two-seam fastball and the circle changeup for Greg Maddux. Also had sliders and curveballs that was able to keep batters second-guessing. Greg Maddux was your premier complete pitcher of that time. Head and shoulders above anybody else, in my opinion. And there were a lot of great ones during that time. But his ability to see the batter, know their tendencies, their strengths, their weaknesses, and his ability to put together that particular pitches, especially that two-seam fastball, which is just one that gets you striking out all the time. Greg Maddux was very cerebral on the pitching mound, and that's why he was as good as anyone. And we talk about his counterpart, the great Tom Glavine, through the two-seam fastball 90% of the time. And just like Greg Maddux, he studies batter tendencies, knows what he's doing with a pitcher when he's on the mound. And when he sees a batter, he knows what he's doing. That's what he did in Game 6 of the 95 World Series to clinch it for the Braves and become the final World Series MVP. When you talk about these particular players and this particular staff, everybody's always going to pinpoint those top two. We talk about Maddux and Glavine. Probably lethal of a 1-2 punch pitching combination in baseball history, especially among pitchers. That's a no-brainer. When you talk about some of the other guys, I mean, John Smoltz was as good as anyone. Steve Avery, although he was hit and miss, still had some good moments. They had Kent Mercker, who was a good fill-in, would be a good fill-in just in case one of those guys went down. He was solid. And, of course, the bullpen at the middle relief, which is also very solid. Of course, Mark Wohlers was as good as anyone. He had a 2.09 ERA that year, 1995, was as good as anyone. Of course, Greg McMichael, Pedro Bobon was as good as anyone. Who could forget Jason Schmidt, who played well in his appearances. And we talk about pitching back then, when you're facing the Atlanta Braves as a batter, they may not look like scary individuals, but when they kept you off balance with a variety of pitches, they knew how to do it, and that's why they controlled the mound when they took it. And you talk about that year 30 years ago when they clinched the World Series at Fulton County against the Cleveland Indians. A terrific roster. And we talk about the guys at the middle of the lineup, the guys that hit. I mean, the key guys, obviously, Marquise Grissom, as I said before the season, probably the sneakiest thing they did to get him over the hump was acquire him from Montreal. Of course, we know Chipper Jones. I mentioned the Cincinnati native, David Justice, the clinching Game 6 home run after putting down the Atlanta Braves fans, stepped up to the mound, stepped up, hit the home run, and became a hero. Ryan Klesko was a good one. Javi Lopez, who hit basically the go-ahead grand slam in Game 2 of the 95 National League title series against Cincinnati, had clutch hits when he was asked to step up. He's a good one. Of course, one of the solid first basemen of that time, Fred McGriff, when they got him last season, the season before from the Padres before the lockout, filled an admirably in that first baseman slot. A terrific lineup. Mark Lemke, of course, Jeff Blauser. I swear, the first time I saw Jeff Blauser, I thought the guy was 70 years old in 1995. I mean, that's how old he looked. I mean, that's what I thought about him. But that Braves team needed that World Series to get over the hump because they were starting to peg him as that greatest team that could never get it done. They did it 30 years ago. They managed to get 2 more World Series in the 90s, in 96 and 99. Granted, they lost both times to the Yankees. But the team of the 90s, you can go ahead and peg them that, even though they only won 1 World Series, still multiple division titles, multiple World Series appearances. What a terrific run, led by the great manager Bobby Cox. And that pitching staff, the 1-2 punch of Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine, maybe the most lethal 2-pitcher combination at the top of any pitching rotation in baseball history. Brought a lot of stuff, brought a lot of nasty stuff, kept batters off balance, and won a lot of games as a result. That's for you guys over there representing the ATL. I said the 2 things I've always liked about Atlanta has always been Braves fans and Evander Holyfield. Whenever I think of Atlanta, I think of those 2 things. Now, real quick, before I proceed into boxing, this is a little shout-out narrative to those in Cincinnati going to Columbus this weekend. Don't just go to Columbus. Go to Columbus, take brooms with you, because let's get the sweep. And keep those clowns in Columbus, staying in Columbus, because we know Columbus is filled with clowns. I should call them Clownumbus, because they're filled with clowns. Keep them clowns in Columbus. Come home, and let's celebrate the sweep. Take the brooms with you, sweep them out of town, keep them in Columbus, and come back home to Cincinnati, and let's celebrate FC Cincinnati. Right now, you guys are the good thing that's happening here in Cincinnati, not the Bengals, because the Bengals fans ruined it. It's you guys. You guys were rolling Game 1, and you guys played a phenomenal game. Best game Pat Noonan has coached. Keep the momentum going. Go to Columbus. Take over Columbus. Bring the brooms. Sweep them out. Come back home to Cincinnati, and let's celebrate. That's all we got to do. I'll be watching you guys Sunday night. Don't just go to Columbus. Go to Columbus with some brooms, because you have some house cleaning you got to do, some sweeping you got to do, and let's take care of business. Now to the world of boxing. And lots of history to talk about tonight. I'll get to the big one here in a little bit. First one is going to talk about what took place 36 years ago. And this, 37 years ago. This is at the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas. This was Julio Cesar Chavez and Jose Luis Ramirez in a unification fight in the 135-pound weight class. I called this a cleanup because it just started to evolve to the 3-belt era, but the 3rd belt had no credibility. And it still doesn't. Actually, no belts do. Both guys were champions representing the country of Mexico. Both guys got their titles under polar opposite circumstances. Chavez by just bum rushing and obliterating Edwin Rosario, and we know what that was all about. I mean, he turned Edwin Rosario's face inside out so bad, I thought Edwin Rosario got into a fight with the next wife. Jose Luis Ramirez was gift-wrapped his belt because of a disputed decision over Pernell Whitaker, which we know Jose Luis Ramirez not went around in that fight in Paris against Pernell Whitaker. I bring this up because there's been a lot of huge misperceptions about Julio Cesar Chavez's fighting style. If you watch this fight, he wasn't just a head-on brawler. He brought a lot of skill, and he put a clinic on how to beat a straightforward southpaw like Ramirez. Step to the right, time with right-hand leads, and step away. And that's what he did basically all night. Ramirez had a couple moments here and there, but it was Chavez's beauty that got him to the decision win based on a headbutt in the 11th round, which fighters' heads clashed. Granted, the stoppage was sort of a bit of an outrage, but Chavez had the fight under control anyways. But Julio Cesar Chavez was not this straightforward plotter like a lot of these Mexican brawlers are. He showed a lot more immense boxing talent, controlling the ring, timing perfectly, right-hand leads down the middle, but sometimes doubling up on it. And when he did that, he kept the warrior, Jose Luis Ramirez, at bay. Ramirez maybe got one or two shots in the early rounds, but we know the chin of Chavez, one of the premier ones at the time. And Chavez winning the technical decision to basically clean out the lightweight division of those two championship belts, and ascended himself, probably at that point, sealed his distinction of the number one fighter pound for pound, because that was when the Mike Tyson fiasco took place. There's a giant misperception, and this is where the fight community shows their cowardice, and it shows it big time. If you think you can amass a record that Julio Cesar Chavez and Jose Luis Ramirez did going into this fight, put the gloves on and step out there and let me see you do it. I don't think any guys have the balls to do it because you have no balls. These two guys were forced to fight at a younger age, given the basically a country that was going through a lot of poverty type situations. I won't go into details because I'll be honest, I don't know too much of it. But they were forced to fight to feed their families some way, somehow. And back then, you couldn't even, back then, it was like the equivalent of fighting for 50 cents. That's what these two did. And you can say what you want about the records. If doing what they did was as easy as you guys say it is, why don't you guys go out there and do it? I want to see you guys have the balls to do it. You guys don't have the balls to do it. I want to see you do it. Maybe if you guys stop acting like casuals and cowards, actually do it. Maybe you show these two fighters some more appreciation. And when you talk about this, what they did, every fighter pads a record. Okay, I'm going to say that every fighter pads a record. These two aren't the ones to the minds of the cowards and the casuals. Were the fighters with more quality resumes? Absolutely. But sometimes you got to give credit to quantity, and that's what these two guys did. And we talk about their careers. And we talk about the career of Julio Cesar Chavez from the night he beat Rosario all the way, really the capitation to cap it off with this, to the Pernell Whitaker fight, the distinction of the best fighter pound for pound. He deserved it, despite what Ring Magazine said, because fighters like Al Bernstein, Jim Lampley had no respect for Julio Cesar Chavez and never called him great or good or gave him the distinction of the best fighter pound for pound when they were calling fights. Same with the guys at Ring Magazine like Nigel Collins and Wallace Matthews, who never respected him. But he was a legit pound-for-pound fighter at that point because the Mike Tyson fiasco was a mess. Pernell Whitaker was starting to come on, but came on later to challenge. But what he showed on this night being Chavez, he was not just a straight-ahead brawler. He had the ability to circle the ring and ring generalship, pick off punches, and the ones he took, he can take because he had one of the greatest chins. But he talked about how to beat an incoming southpaw. He wrote a clinic on it, just timed him with right-hand leads all night long, and that's what he did. And there's nothing more you can do about it. The premier fighter at the time, cleaned out the lightweight division. The rest of his career is history. Ramirez would fight 4 more times after this, but he had a solid run of 102-9. Terrific, solid fighter during that time. Not to the level of some of the other great Mexicans, but certainly really an underrated great Mexican was Jose Luis Ramirez. Fought them all. Of course, got the revenge on Edwin Rosario in 84. But that was it for him. This is basically the end of it. But it was 37 years ago at the Las Vegas Hilton where Julio Cesar Chavez completed the 2-belt sweep to beat Jose Luis Ramirez on a technical decision, putting on a clinic on how to throw right-hand leads on incoming southpaws, and ascended the distinction of the best fighter pound for pound, much to the chagrin of guys like Jim Lampley, Lou DiBella, and Al Bernstein. Because they still haven't said why they never liked the guy. Now, we're going to fast forward a little bit. This is for everybody in the fight community because you like to call everything cherry picks. This is what took place 32 years ago at Jay, Oklahoma. It was Tommy Morrison and Michael Bentt. Tommy Morrison was staring at an $8 million payday with Lennox Lewis, $8 million guaranteed at the minimum. All he had to do was win this fight. That's why they fight the fights. And Michael Bentt had other ideas. Looked like Morrison hurt him with the trademark left hook early, Bentt on a cover-up. Second, Morrison tried to open up to go for the kill. The perfectly placed counter by Michael Bentt. Tommy Morrison was on all fours. Morrison floored twice more. Michael Bentt wins the first round knockout to pull the stunner and knock Morrison out of the $8 million payday. Why do I bring this up? Because we have morons in the fight community who call every fight a cherry pick. This, you guys, if you want to call it a cherry pick, this was a cherry pick that went bad and went south. And this is why you better take care of business against anyone and everyone. And I trace back to why people call Julio Cesar Chavez overrated. You know, you have to focus in that ring regardless of what the opponent's record is. And a lot of you guys in the fight community show your cowardice when you don't talk about this. And you show it badly. Because this is a perfect case of what happens when you don't handle business. If you can't take care of business, you lose out on a lot. And that's what happened to Tommy Morrison. Maybe the thing about this fight, I said all along when it comes to Tommy Morrison, when he delivered the hit, it was the end. But when he got hit, it was the end. And this is what happened to Tommy Morrison, basically his whole career. And this was the epitome of it, especially after what happened 2 years before when Ray Mercer just begrudged him along the ropes. And he was basically a shot commodity at that point. But if you can't take care of business in that ring, and if you don't know how to take care of business in that ring, one-on-one, regardless of record, regardless of career accomplishments or career accolades, you might as well stop calling every fighter overrated, because nobody is. Because that's why they fight the fights. If it was easy as you said it was, how come Mike Tyson lost to James Buster Douglas? How come Muhammad Ali lost to Leon Spinks? This is where I lost the fight community a long time ago. That's why I walked out on you guys again, because you guys are just so incoherently cowardly that you guys don't get it. And Tommy Morrison versus Michael Bentt is the perfect example of it. Bentt only had, 10 fights, I believe? No, 11 fights. He was 10-1 against a Tommy Morrison, who only lost to Ray Mercer. I said Morrison had the $8 million payday against Lennox Lewis. That went down the tubes at that point because Bentt blew him out in one round. Granted, Morrison and Lewis fought in 1995, but it had no luster at that point because Tommy Morrison was a shot commodity after being gift-wrapped a draw against Ross Purity. But the cowardice of the fight community once again rears its ugly head when you call fighters like Julio Cesar Chavez overrated, because when you're in that ring one-on-one, records go out the window, everything else, resumes goes out the window. You can't beat the opponent in front of you, then the rest is history. And we talk about what took place with Tommy Morrison and Michael Bentt. It was a perfect example of it. Because Tommy Morrison had the $8 million payday, wasn't focused, was living a wild lifestyle, which has been well chronicled countless times. It caught up to him on this night. One tactical error, and Michael Bentt just let him have it, and the fight was over. That's why it's a one-on-one sport. That's why you don't take records into consideration. That's why you don't take accomplishments into consideration. That's why you don't consider anything like that in one-on-one combat sports, because once those bells ring, it's a whole new ballgame. It's one-on-one. Resumes and career accomplishments don't dictate it. And that's what happened with Tommy Morrison when he lost to Michael Bentt. Not only did he lose the fight, he lost out on $8 million to fight Lennox Lewis. Granted, Morrison and Lewis eventually fought 2 years later, but it had no luster. Would have had the luster had Morrison take care of business. but it's the epitome of what Tommy Morrison became. One of the sad stories in the sport was Tommy Morrison outside the ring. Michael Bentt lost to her behind. I heard he had some physical health issues after the fight that prompted him to retire. So really, it was a sad night all around for both guys. Now we talk about the main event. And this one, we're going to go back because history was made 38 years ago at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. It was Thomas Hearns against Juan Domingo Roldan for the middleweight championship after Marvin Hagler retired and Sugar Ray Leonard vacated the title after he beat Marvin Hagler. The political alphabet soup became so much alphabet soup, you can't even buy a can of alphabet soup at the store. That's how much of a mess the alphabet soup world of boxing became. Story of this one is if Hearns won the title, he would have been the first to win major world titles in 4 weight divisions. That's never happened before. So we've go focus back a little bit because this is after Thomas Hearns had the surreal wars with Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler. Question was how much he had left. He didn't manage to beat Dennis Andres in his own home state of Detroit, Michigan, but Andres was basically in over his head. And Hearns became the light heavyweight champ, brought himself down to middleweight as he was trying to pursue rematches with both Hagler and Leonard at the time. Fights this strong, tough, durable Juan Roldan out of Argentina. A strong, durable fighter. Did all he can to hang around Marvin Hagler in a middleweight title fight. And come from a strong blend of Argentine fighters, most notably the standout light heavyweight Victor Galindez. For this vacant championship, basically both guys viewed it as an opportunity in the post-Marvin Hagler era because that's what we were headed. Because the Four Kings era died when Hagler retired. That was basically just, I don't know, the 3 Kings, like the 3 Kings subsidiaries because that's what those 3 were. But on this particular night, we were treated to a better than expected fight. I mean, the first minute of the fight, the left hook that floored Roldan. Looked like Roldan was going to be knocked out early, and Hearns had the fight under control. But Thomas Hearns tasted the leather of Juan Roldan, and now he's hanging on, and he's hurt. But the first round ends. Another solid shot, and down went Juan Roldan in the first round. So although we had 2 knockdowns in the favor of Thomas Hearns, Juan Roldan had his moments and looked like he was going to floor Hearns. And a great first round between Thomas Hearns and Juan Roldan. Great first round. I think we heard that before with Thomas Hearns. Yeah, the first round against the Marvin Hagler in 85. But when you consider what started to happen after this, it looked like Hearns started to gain control again. And looked like he was going to control the fight again. Floored Roldan again in the second round. But Roldan gets up, and he comes on again, and he's still going after Thomas Hearns. And boy, do we have a Donnybrook taking place. Go to the third round. Roldan started to gain control himself, and now he and Hearns are trading. But we fast forward to the 4th round, and when it looked like Roldan had Hearns ready to go this time, a subtle move by Hearns that makes Roldan miss, a perfectly placed 2-punch combination, and now Roldan is hurt, and Hearns starts to tee off with right hands, and Roldan is down face first on the canvas in the 4th round, and he's not getting up. And the fight is essentially over, and Thomas Hearns becomes the first fighter in boxing history at that time to win world titles in 4 weight divisions, when winning multiple weight divisions still meant something, but it was starting to fade because of the alphabet soup world of the sport. I coined the phrase with Tommy Morrison when he got hit, it was it, but when he delivered the hit, it was it. Probably could say the same with Thomas Hearns, maybe not quite to that level, but it was close because every time he got hit, funky things happened to him. But that right cross, when he put it on you, good night. I mean, Pepino Cuevas, Roberto Duran, and Juan Roldan, 3 guys who found out. Especially Roldan, who was a part of history 38 years ago at Caesar's Palace. The big, almost like a fortune and a misfortune for Thomas Hearns was he came during that era of the Four Kings because he was a phenomenal fighter, but still, at the time, unfortunate for him, known for the 2 losses he had to both Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and 2 epic classics. And that's what they both are, upper elite classics when it comes to Thomas Hearns. I mean, the Leonard Hearns first fight of September 16, 1981, always in the mind of fight fans because it had ups and downs, lots of momentum shifts, high-level skill and will from both fighters. And of course, the Marvin Hagler fight, which is just the 8-minute throw it down at a bar type fight, which is what those two did. But for Thomas Hearns in that first round against Hagler to fight that first round with a broken hand showed you why this guy had the heart the size of the United States of America, because that guy had a big heart. No one had a heart bigger than Thomas Hearns at that time. But maybe the biggest misfortune was sometimes you get lost in the shuffle, not because he wasn't great, but there were a lot of great fighters at that time. We talk about guys like Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Aaron Pryor, Larry Holmes, Julio Cesar Chavez, eventually Pernell Whitaker. Let's throw another ones in there. Donald Curry, who was going to be something at one point. Larry Holmes, Michael Spinks. Let's go on among many others. But Thomas Hearns was as great as all of them, and it sort of stinks for him because they still remember him for the two losses to Leonard and Hagler in 81 and 85 respectively. But when he bursted onto the scene out of Detroit, Michigan, at a time when Detroit needed something of significance, Thomas Hearns was everything Detroit. And when he obliterated Pepino Cuevas in 1980 to win the welterweight title, the world was introduced to a phenomenon. And of course, it led to the super fight with Ray Leonard. And of course, later he would beat Wilfred Benitez to win the super welterweight title in a boxing clinic. Fight wasn't as close as the judges had it. To the one-punch obliteration of Roberto Duran, which is still a stunner to this day because no one thought you could starch Duran like that. And that Thomas Hearns' right hand did it. To the super fight of 1985 against Marvin Hagler, which had probably the greatest round in boxing history, round one, which Tommy Hearns fought the remainder of that fight with a broken hand against the hard head of Marvin Hagler, whose head was so hard he thought he was born with a concrete in his brain. Then he comes up to light heavyweight to stop Dennis Andres, and then to what took place 38 years ago at Caesar's Palace, when he just peppered the tough, durable Argentine Juan Roldan with right hands all night long until Juan Roldan's body just gave out on him, and that's what happened. Tommy Hearns was just super sensational, stuck at a time when there were fighters, they were very darn great also. Sometimes I think he gets overlooked to a point I sometimes want to call him underrated because the guy was a sensational. I mean, you don't win 4 world titles in the 80s and just be nothing. But as I said, just because people still want to remember him for the 2 losses to Leonard and Hagler in the respective fights. Anyway, he's okay around his career a little more too long, but still, his place in history secure and cemented. Nothing you can do about it, because that's what Thomas Hearns was. I mean, we could coin the phrase underrated, overrated on everyone. I think in the curious case of Thomas Hearns, because he came at a time that, when they were actually, I would put it down like this, that they were greater fighters that were as great, if not greater than him, as enemies of the shot at Thomas Hearns. It's like as if Hearns is underrated, because, when people talk about Thomas Hearns, they anointed him to the 2 losses to Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler. You don't see the big picture with Thomas Hearns. This guy was a freak. I mean, we never saw a 6'2", 6'3" welterweight do the things this guy did. And for him to have the career he had is absolutely sensational. I mean, he's as great as all of them. And just this sort of almost is like fortunate, but also misfortunate that he was in the middle of probably the golden age of that sport. That's it. We talk about guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Salvador Sanchez, Wilfredo Gomez, Larry Holmes, Aaron Pryor, Alexis Arguello, Evander Holyfield, Pernell Whitaker, Julio Cesar Chavez. He was in there with all of them. Great as all of them. Just, people just point to the 2 losses, and it's almost like a disgrace to Thomas Hearns, to where now we always have to call this guy underrated because this guy was the goods. When you have a right cross that can flatten Roberto Duran, you can flatten anyone in any era. I don't care what anybody says. This guy would have been a matchup nightmare for any welterweight in any era. Ask Sugar Ray Leonard, he'll tell you. Ask Roberto Duran, he'll tell you. Ask anyone who fought him, they'll tell you. Thomas Hearns was a problem, and it's certainly an all-time great. So sometimes people talk about everything else that happened in the 80s and don't mention him. It's as if we're supposed to call this guy underrated now because it's not talked about enough. He's certainly up there. That guy was just a phenom, and because a 6'2" frame as a welterweight was a freak of nature, and I mean it in a good way. That right cross that plants you, good night. Roberto Duran still seeing stars 42 years later after Hearns starched him. And nobody thought you could do that to Roberto Duran. Thomas Hearns says, hold my bottle. I did another phrase. I don't use that phrase on my platform. But 38 years ago, Thomas Hearns cemented his place among the all-time great I'll call middle-sized big men from welterweight to light heavyweight in that category. When he starts the tough, durable Argentine Juan Domingo Roldan in 4 rounds to become the first fighter to win world championships in 4 weight classes, at a time when multiple weight divisions still meant something because no one did it in 4 weight classes. But due to the alphabet soup nature of the political aspect of the sport, it started to diminish. But luckily, Hearns made history at the right time. From the Motor City Cobra to the Hitman, that guy did it all. None of the top guys wanted to fight him for a reason, and he was fighting today. A lot of the top guys would duck him, and there's a reason for it. Ask Roberto Duran, ask Sugar Ray Leonard. They'll tell you. And on that note, that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I will be back tomorrow night. Tuesday night, a super show to cover arguably the greatest trilogy in the post-Muhammad Ali era. An hour show only devoted to that. For your 5 followers, I think you can figure that one out. And for those of you guys that missed this show or any other ones, you can catch me on the Apple Podcasts and the iHeartRadio apps. If you want to catch a video version, you can catch it on the Spotify and Patreon apps. And as always, as I say to everyone all the time, make self-care your number 1 priority in all walks of life. Always take care of yourself first before you take care of anything else. If you take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Because if you take care of yourself, all the good things will come your way. Don't let anyone treat you as a priority when in their minds, you're just an option. Those kind of people, you tell them to get out. And if you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else is going to matter. The focus should be on you and you only. And on that note, have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and I will see you tomorrow.